I never could have imagined it. Every dragon around me was clearly off the charts powerful, yet all they ever did was eat and sleep, too lazy to even move. And what made it even more baffling was that no matter how much they slacked off every day, tomorrow they'd still be stronger than today. Because these weren't ordinary dragons. They were ancestor dragons, the purest bloodline. Since ancestor dragons are born as the most perfect beings in existence, they all live by one ultimate philosophy: laziness. If you're born insanely powerful, why bother doing anything? And as it happened, I was reincarnated as one of them. I thought, since ancestor dragons are so strong, shouldn't I be able to hatch and immediately rule the world? But instead I was told that every ancestor dragon born must follow the 4 iron laws laid down by Dragon Island. The problem was, each rule was more absurd than the last. I was still a dragon egg when the Dragon King informed me of the situation. The following 4 iron laws must be engraved in the heart of every ancestor dragon. First, you must never voluntarily begin training. Training is an extremely childish behavior. Second, you must never feel envy toward others. Envy is poison to the dragon bloodline. Third, you must never harbor fantasies about the future. Fantasies damage the dignity of dragonkind. And finally, you must never make contact with lesser races. Contact leads to your own corruption. These 4 iron laws must be observed by all ancestor dragons. Should any dragon dare violate even one, something truly terrible will happen. At first I didn't think much of it. I actually thought it sounded great. After all, in my past life, I was a 40-year-old work slave, grinding $9.96 every single day, supporting parents, raising kids, mortgage in the middle, not daring to rest for a single day, terrified of giving a bad performance and getting fired. And now I could rest openly and without shame. The thought alone was intoxicating. But over time, I realized I'd been wrong. Since I reincarnated in this world, 15 years had already passed. In those 15 years, all I did was eat and sleep. Not a single form of entertainment. It was unbearably boring. On the other hand, in those 15 years, despite doing absolutely nothing, the mana inside me kept growing, now casually flapping a wing, could obliterate an entire mountain. But by comparison, my mental growth had completely stagnated. Not that it was surprising. Ancestor dragons casually live for millions of years. And when I thought about living this same life for that much longer, I figured I'd rather crash into a wall and end it. Finally, one day, I tried striking up a conversation with an ancestor dragon a few thousand years older than me. Hey sis, there's something I want to ask you. Go ahead. What is it? If a dragon violates the iron laws, what exactly is this terrible thing that happens? The moment I finished speaking, her lazily swaying tail suddenly stopped. Her eyes slowly opened. I could clearly feel her drowsiness fading. I expected to get scolded, but instead she gave me an answer I never saw coming. Nothing happens at all. You just get called a fallen dragon. She then explained that fallen dragon was just a title. You wouldn't be exiled or attacked by other ancestor dragons. You wouldn't face any punishment. And other dragons probably couldn't even be bothered to insult you. Everyone found it too much trouble, so nobody would care, let alone do anything about it. After all, everyone's lazy. I never expected it. Those so-called iron laws were really just guidelines that everyone hoped you'd follow. From the day I was born until now, I'd been paralyzed by those rules and never done anything. If no one was going to stop me no matter what, it was time to make a move. I immediately thought of a forbidden zone in the south of Dragon Island that I'd always been curious about. I made my way there quickly and immediately spotted an unusual cave below. On the stone outside the entrance, 8 large characters were clearly inscribed. Star Treasury, no entry. So the forbidden zone was a treasure vault. I looked around. No guards, no barriers, no presence watching over it. Nothing at all. Just a sign saying no entry, with 0 actual security measures in place. You had to admit, it was very on brand for ancestor dragons. As I walked inside, I was pleasantly surprised to find it far more spacious than expected. The ceiling was embedded with countless mana-rich ore crystals, and the floor was piled with more golden treasure than I could count. But I barely glanced at any of it, because ahead of me stood row upon row of bookshelves. After 15 years, I was finally looking at books again. The faint lingering smell of ink brought back so much. I casually pulled a spellbook off the shelf, my past life's knowledge combined with an ancestor dragon's mana perception. Let me race through the entire foundational magic theory book in no time. My first reaction after finishing was, what a waste. Books filled with human wisdom, just sitting here collecting dust. An absolute crime. Those lazy dragons had no idea what they were missing. Ancestor dragons had never bothered channeling mana into spells, because a casual swipe of their bare claw already matched the power of high-level magic, so there was never any reason to study how mana worked. Then I noticed a book tucked in the corner of the shelves, titled Transformation Magic. By restructuring one's own mana, one could shift into different forms. In that instant, a wild idea sprouted in my mind. If I used this, could I transform into a human? Go out into the human world? Leave this silent, boring Dragon Island? The more I thought about it, the more excited I got, and I dove straight in. Strangely though, in my past life, sitting at a desk, I couldn't focus for even 10 minutes. Now I could read through multiple volumes in one sitting, and no matter how much knowledge I crammed in, my mind never felt tired. I thought to myself, truly, ancestor dragons are the most perfect beings. After working through several foundational spellbooks, I found that beyond changing appearance with mana, I could also suppress its output. If I walked into the human world as I was now, even in human form, mana would still leak out of me without me realizing. Anyone with strong enough perception would spot the difference immediately. But once I mastered mana suppression, I'd be completely indistinguishable from an ordinary human. With that, I decisively started practicing. The book said the essence of transformation magic was the arrangement and density control of mana. Reading deeper, the principle turned out to be simple. Reshape your mana into the desired form. The construction was entirely driven by the caster's imagination. So all I had to do was picture the ideal version of myself, layer my mana over it, and I'd become that form. At first, I tried imagining my past life's appearance, but it had been far too long. I could barely remember what I looked like. Only the vaguest outline remained. In the end, I used my original features as a base, added a high-bridged nose, deep-set eyes and smooth-flowing hair, going for the look of a hero from an anime isekai. If I was going to be human, I was obviously going to be handsome. That's only natural, right? As the transformation magic activated, my entire body dissolved into particles of light and faded away. The next second, a textbook isekai hero appeared in its place. In the 16th year since my reincarnation, I was human again. My true form might be a dragon, but I could finally head into the human world. Though now wasn't quite the time. I needed to learn more about the outside world first. After that, I stayed in the Star Treasury for over a decade, reading a full 10,000 books. With each piece of knowledge gained, my longing for the outside world grew a little more. Yet even after 10,000 books, I hadn't even gotten through a tenth of the collection. To finish every book in the treasury would take at least another 100 years, and I couldn't wait any longer. I'd come back and read when I had time. But before setting off, there was one thing I still needed to do. Sis Lucia? She was my only friend on Dragon Island. We hadn't talked many times in total, but I still had to say goodbye before leaving. When she saw me, she spoke first, asking if I was already dressed to go traveling. But she was puzzled, wondering if I'd finished all the books in the Star Treasury. I was surprised to hear that. If you knew I'd been in the Star Treasury all this time, why didn't you come stop me? Gulucia replied calmly, because it was too much trouble. If you find the outside world interesting, going to see it isn't a bad thing. Hearing that, I was briefly at a loss for words. For all these decades, she'd been the only one I could have a real conversation with. Her answers were always offhand and indifferent. But if it hadn't been for her, I might have been swallowed whole by loneliness long ago. Thank you, sis. She said nothing more after that. Just closed her eyes and went back to sleep. But after sensing me leave, she used the Dragon Clan's telepathy to send one last message. Kid, watch yourself out there. If it's you, I don't think you'll have any trouble wherever you end up. Those words touched me deeply. I hadn't expected to find someone who believed in me here. My new life was truly beginning now. I believed the road ahead would be something worth living. According to the books, the nearest place with human activity was still quite far. At my flying speed, it would take at least 2.5 months. A bit long, but for an ancestor dragon with a near infinite lifespan, it was nothing. The months passed in a blink. Ahead, I could faintly make out man-made structures. To avoid causing a commotion, as I approached the human town, I activated transformation magic on the spot, but I forgot I was still in midair. In human form, I couldn't fly. I plummeted straight toward the ground, and just like that, I crashed down hard. The ground cracked open. Dust flew everywhere. The shockwave rippled through the air. I awkwardly stood up, dusted off my clothes, as if nothing had happened. I assumed no one would have seen that embarrassing landing. But not only were people around, I had landed dead center between them. In front of me was a golden-haired girl. Behind me was a demon dragon. The scene was extremely awkward. Am I interrupting something? Did I disturb you too? Clearly, the girl in front of me was terrified, in no state to answer a casual question. But I had to say, she really was adorable. I hadn't seen a human girl in nearly half a century, and even accounting for however much rose-tinted bias I had, her face and figure were simply too perfect. To avoid being mistaken for a threat by a beautiful stranger, I quickly tried to put her at ease. Don't be scared, little one. Big brother is not a bad guy, I promise. The moment those words left my mouth, the girl suddenly drew her sword and pointed it forward with a face full of alert. At first, I thought she'd figured out what I was. But wait, that couldn't be right. Then I turned to look where her blade was pointing. Of course. No wonder she was so tense. A demon dragon that size radiating pure malice. Any normal human would be scared and on edge. Though, was this dragon also a rule breaker like me? But it clearly wasn't an ancestor dragon. Its mana was far too weak. Probably less than 1% of mine. But what was strange was why this creature kept glaring at me with such menace. Did it think I was its prey? Regardless, we share some ancestry, you and I. Why keep staring at me like that? Then I remembered I was not only in human form, but had suppressed all mana output. To everyone else, I was just an ordinary human. It had clearly misunderstood. I was about to explain when it was already in a fighting stance, ready to attack at any moment. I glanced back at the golden-haired girl. Whatever happened, I refused to make a fool of myself in front of her. But I also didn't want to reveal my true power here, so I went with a solution that covered both. Easy there, sorry. Didn't mean to startle you. This is probably your territory, right? We'll leave right now, okay? For this little demon dragon, maybe it was just lounging around its turf in peace. When I crashed in and disrupted it, now that I'd offered a sincere apology, surely it would calm down. I was wrong. The creature had already opened its mouth, mana condensing into a breath attack, about to fire at us any second. My words hadn't just failed. They'd made it angrier. Suddenly, a shout of warning came from behind me, and the golden-haired girl stepped directly in front of me. The blast hit her dead on. I never expected that she'd step up to protect me in that moment. But she was just one girl. How could she withstand a dragon's attack? I watched her get blasted back several meters, collapsing motionless on the ground. My mind went completely blank. This had gone far beyond anything I'd anticipated. Seeing the demon dragon get into its stance once more, a smile naturally spread across my face, but the warmth in my eyes was gone. Fine, I was trying to settle this peacefully, but you decided to strike first. Looks like you didn't feel my sincerity at all.